A lot of women, when they think about their health, they now are starting to think about hormones, which is really great. But for many women, understanding hormones alone will not explain the way we feel, because actually our brains respond to hormones very differently, even when we have the same hormone levels. Historically, women would think of jewelry as an investment, but my self-care, my medical needs come second kind of thing. And I think for women, it's still a new concept to invest in their well-being. I think we've seen the rise of wellness tech, and I think the best examples of kind of expensive wellness tech would be like the LED masks or the Dyson Air Wraps or whatever, right? But those are pretty new cultural phenomena. In a lot of business theory, people would say it's the wrong thing, but no one has ever built for this audience. And I know that women kind of deserve better. Yeah. And if we do build the best product, we will show that women are willing to invest as long as they're treated fairly.
How does the PMS affect on productivity?
There's one, it does relieve the pain when it comes, but most importantly, that mood management and that brain fog and motivation. Actually, motivation is one of our highest reported symptoms that changes after using Nettle.
Welcome to Ctrl.Alt.Thrive with me, Navneet, where technology meets purpose and impact. As we are proud partner with UNESCO Women for Ethical AI Network, with our main focus on ethics, AI, and gender equity. In today's episode, we are joined by Dr. Emilė Radytė, a Lithuanian-born neuroscientist and the founder of Samphire Neuroscience. With a degree from Harvard and Oxford, and blends science and innovation to improve women's health. Her work led to creation of Nettle, the first wearable brain stimulation device for menstrual pain and PMS, now backed by NHS and recognized by Forbes. M is reshaping how we think about the brain and body.
Hi, Dr. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us in your office. And how are you doing today?
Good. We're preparing for audits, so it's been a hectic day, but every day is different in this job, which is why I love it.
Just to kickstart, I would love to know a little about your background. Can you tell our listeners about you?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Lithuania and grew up there until I was 18. And then I was really lucky to go to Harvard for my undergrad, where I was one of the first people to do a joint degree in neuroscience and anthropology. So combining the studies of the brain with how they fit into our societies and the way that we live our everyday lives. And during that time, I actually also worked as an emergency medic, which I think is a lot of what informs my everyday work. So the ability to apply what we learn in the labs and all of the theory and actual practice and making people's lives easier, because I really saw that the stuff that we see when you call 911 is very different from what we learn is actually possible, especially when it comes to brain sciences. Right. And then I moved to the UK for my master's and PhD in Oxford, all in neuroscience, always focusing on the brain. So I might be a little bit biased in our conversation today, but I do think that a lot of women's health is related to brain development and brain activity, and try to bring that awareness to the broader population as well. And then from there on, started Samphire, which has been the most fun journey of my life, and we've been going for about 4 years now.
Amazing. I love the work you're doing. So what problem are you solving broadly, and how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem we're solving is that a lot of women, when they think about their health, they now are starting to think about hormones, which is really great. But for many women, understanding hormones alone will not explain the way we feel, because actually our brains respond to hormones very differently, even when we have the same hormone levels. Right. So what I'm really trying to bring to people and to all the women out there is an understanding that their brains are a critical part of their health journey, and then build solutions for that health journey so that you're not stuck knowing that there's a problem, but are actually able to solve it as well. So we're closing the loop between understanding and actually being able to do something about it.
Yeah. Was it yours related to your personal experience or personal story? And you're also a doctor, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was a combination of factors. One and foremost, I obviously lived all my life as a woman. And so I think from that, I not only had my own experiences with menstrual pain as well as PMS, but also saw a lot of other women and friends talking to me about it. And I was always surprised that I would speak about it with my female friends, but oftentimes even their partners wouldn't know about it. So I knew this was something that was real, that existed, that people spoke about, but in quite close settings. And then separately, as a scientist, when I was doing my PhD, I was running a study on depression, and then realized that a lot of women who were coming in with depression, their depression was linked to a reproductive event, whether that was period experience, whether that was pregnancy, whether that was menopause, I realized that nothing about their treatment was adapted to the fact that they had those changing hormones. So that's when I realized that that gap was missing, that those experiences were real but often invalidated, and that the solutions out there were not catered at all to those differences. And that's what kind of sparked the entire idea. And initially, Samphire was just an idea, and that Nettle was born as a more specific manifestation of how can we build something from the existing science and make it more tailored and custom made for women.
Great. And can you break down how Nestle works and what makes it different from traditional approaches to managing menstrual pain and PMS?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Nuzzle is a brain stimulation device that uses weak electrical pulses over two regions of the brain, the prefrontal cortex here and the motor cortex here. And these regions are responsible for mood management and pain management specifically. So we essentially enable and train your brain to manage your emotions and pain right before your period, so that when you have those PMS symptoms and those pain symptoms, your brain helps you adapt to them and eventually relieve all of those symptoms. So when I say that, for people who have exposure to brain stimulation, this will not sound strange, but that's definitely the minority of listeners. And the vast majority of people will know that the traditional solutions for these problems are painkillers. And if you ask most women with very severe periods, they're going to take very high doses of painkillers, oftentimes much above the recommended dose, often triggering lots of side effects. And on the other hand, hormonal contraceptives are another common solution, because if you avoid the period, you avoid the problems as well. And then finally, quite a few women that have particularly severe mood disturbances around their period, especially severe PMS symptoms or PMDD, they would be prescribed SSRIs or antidepressants as well. So as you can hear, all of these solutions are kind of based on medication and drugs, so they're very different from a non-invasive electrical treatment, but they're what's on the market and what's been on the market so far. What you'll also notice is that all of those solutions are pretty one size fits all. You take a pill and that's that, and usually the dose needs to increase over time. And my perspective was that if this is something that is really a chronic situation, like you'll have your periods for about 40 years of your life, you'll need to find a way where you don't need to keep increasing the dose and therefore having a negative impact on your body, but something that allows you for your own body to maintain that positive effect. So I think it's different on a couple of levels. One, it's the only solution that manages pain and mood in one device. Two, it's the only one that is drug-free and hormone-free. And three, it really requires a different behavior, specifically around digital nativeness, because all of the device has is one button, and then you control it with an app that syncs to your period, gives you a customized profile, reminds you when to use it. You put it on for 20 minutes and then it does everything for you. And then you can meditate, do breath work, whatever makes most sense for you during that time. And it's really supposed to be a very different user experience from that sense compared to obviously taking a pill.
100%. I think I get worse period migraines, and I'm one of those that who takes high doses.
Yeah.
And it's pretty frustrating, to be honest.
And especially knowing that you probably need to do that for the rest of your life. I feel that's the thing that every time I speak to users, frustrates that I am.
I had someone told me to eat carrots and headache will go up.
I mean, I'm sure tried. Yeah, because people are desperate, I think. And I think that actually you bring up another very interesting point is in the field of women's health, so many things are unknown. Right? People keep being given very random advice that's never been clinically tested. The problem is that most people will try it because they're so desperate and they are looking for a solution to that. And so for us, what was really important is to build a product that we could also validate and regulate and have medically tested, because we thought that there were so many alternatives, like random vitamins, random tools that strap it onto your body and everything's going to be good. And none of those kinds have ever been verified. So doing it a proper way made a huge difference for us.
Yeah, but actually, since you're a doctor, I have personal question to you. Uh, I've asked so many people what is the best alternate. They also suggested to get Botox. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of users in our group, and I've met a lot of women who use Botox in these areas as well for managing migraines. We actually are working with Dr. Manjit Matharu, who is one of the leading migraine specialists in the NHS on a migraine-focused trial. Right. He has used Botox, I think, for the last 20 years to manage migraines. I mean, what I've learned from him is that there's a lot of different subtypes of migraines, so that might work better for some subtypes. I don't know which exact you have, and I wouldn't be able to advise either way. Yeah. I'm not a specialist in the area, but essentially, depending on the type that you have, Botox might be a really, really good solution. And obviously, it's different from cosmetic Botox. It's more like clinical Botox, but it can be very, very helpful.
Great. And also tell me a little more about the device that do you wear during your menstrual cycle? Is it do you have to wear it all day? I'm also someone, if I put head clips or headbands on my head, I also get a headache.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just we're going to ask you, does this gives you like a more headache that you have something hit out in your head?
Great question. So the quick answer is no, because we're very aware of this. Because a lot of people with severe PMS symptoms and PMDD often have autism, which often leads to hypersensitivity of anything on the hair, whether that be migraines, like in your case, or just generally not liking headgear. So we have made the headband. If you want to try it on as well,
I would love to.
yeah, that's just this is the back. So if you want to try putting it on, but it's very soft in the back. Yes, yeah, exactly. And just put it until it feels comfortable. So you can see that the sides, even though it looks quite rigid, it's actually quite soft on the sides, and it's not supposed to push you too much.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of testing, because even though when you look at it from the side, it looks kind of like a semicircle, once you take it off, you'll see that it has lots of little curves and edges that actually really adapt specifically to women's brain shapes. So you can see it has all those little edges to make it specifically comfortable for wearing. That being said, you only need to wear it for 20 minutes. So it's actually very quick, even if it doesn't feel as comfortable. So you wear it for 20 minutes a day, usually in the 5 days leading up to your period. So interestingly, because we build and train your brain using neuroplasticity, we don't add a chemical to overpower your system. We need to do it before the symptoms come. So ironically, we do it during that PMS period before your period comes.
Right.
And that's why we regulate it with an app, because we need to make sure that we know when your period is coming and we know how severe your symptoms are and kind of adjust the doses accordingly.
No, that's great. So where is the device available? Is it only in UK or do you also ship internationally or other markets?
Yeah, so at the moment, it is fully available across Europe and the UK.
Okay.
If you are not from Europe and the UK, you can drop us an email to support@samphireneuro.com. And we do have discovery programs in other regions where essentially we can ship a device to you and then essentially ask you to provide us some feedback if this is a new market we're considering entering, to essentially understand how much need and what accommodations we need to make for the lucky populations.
So you do ship internationally as well?
Yeah,
It's okay. On the personal orders?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. And what's the device price at?
So at the moment, it's £450, and then you have a 1 year free subscription, and then you have £30 a year just to maintain it for the rest of your life. And we will replace the device for free. This is a lifetime device, so you're supposed to kind of pay a one price and then have it for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we do hope to introduce a subscription model over the next 3 months or so that you could have it on a subscription as well, but that will only be available in the UK market to begin with.
Great. So what's the efficacy score? How would you rate this like before and after experience?
Yeah, so obviously everyone responds very differently because it's a medical treatment. But in our clinical trials, we were able to show that 3/4 of women see significant pain relief within a single month, and 2/3 see significant mood relief and an improvement in functionality within a single month. So essentially, the vast majority of people will see a difference within the first month. And then we see about 89% of women see a response within 3 months or so. So essentially, within 3 months of using, the effects increase, and then you're able to sustain them over the long term. In order to support kind of women trying this new technology, we actually have a 90-day free returns policy. So if you try it for 3 cycles and you don't see the effects you want, we take it back, no questions asked, in order to make it easier for everyone.
Right.
I will say that so far our returns rate has been under 3%, which means that actually the real world efficacy might actually be higher than what we found in clinical trials.
Right.
And in general, we find a lot of satisfaction from women, not only seeing the efficacy for their symptoms before and after,
Right.
but also saying that they finally can be in control. Because for a lot of women before that, it was like, there's just nothing I could do. I just need to take time off work, figure it out. And now they're able to do something about it. And I truly didn't understand how much of a difference that on top of the medical efficacy can make as well.
No, that's a really good rate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's predictable. Brains do act in predictable ways, unlike medications, which can interact with our bodies so differently.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been your biggest challenge emerging science with startup culture? Because you're a doctor.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, great question. I think in in science and in general, doing research, propriety and doing one step at a time really matters, because you need to follow the scientific method one step at a time. And therefore, it's necessarily oftentimes quite slow, although the R&D processes. When you combine it with a startup culture, there's a lot of tropes like, build fast, fail fast, and whatever. And you can't really do that if you're building a very new R&D product, especially if it has hardware components which need to be manufactured, if it has software components, if it has a sensitive population that you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver to. You need to be very careful about these things. So I think the hardest thing was blending the velocity of development. So kind of how quickly we build things and develop them, and also how to do that rigor of the scientific method that it requires at a startup pace has been really challenging. And I think the way we've solved it really is by building an outstanding team. We have amazing people on our team who really share those values of building truly unique and differentiated and great products for women, and combining that with knowing that if it's just a research project, it will never make real impact. So we always really want to make it as a company so we can grow and share it with as many women as possible all over the world.
Right. And you also recently raised funding, right? And as we know that broadly, FemTech is underfunded sector. Um, did you feel any challenges in terms of meeting investors, or what was your experience explaining your product and product market fit?
Ooh, great question. I think with product market fit, it's very hard in an area where there's a new technology and a new product and a completely new market. Because if you think about the PMS and menstrual pain market, historically, it hasn't been very big. And I think it's for two reasons. One, there's not many solutions out there. So there's not many people to build it out. Like there's not many new things that have come into that space other than, people rehashing and rebranding different vitamins.
Right.
And then on the other hand, I think for women, it's still a new concept to invest in their well-being. Like, I think we've seen the rise of wellness tech, and I think the best examples of kind of expensive wellness tech would be like the LED masks or like the Dyson Air apps or whatever.
Right.
But those are pretty new cultural phenomena. Historically, women would think of like, jewelry as an investment, but my self-care, my medical needs come second kind of thing.
Right.
And so I think we're in that category where we say that it's okay for you not to want to feel PMS. And obviously, a lot of people we deal with have incredibly severe period pain or mood symptoms.
Right.
But a lot of people may not have very severe symptoms and still want a higher quality of life. Right? We want to say that, you deserve to feel good. There's no reason that you would just need to struggle because you're a woman. And I think that mentality shift is very much on the trend.
Right.
But it is sometimes difficult to explain when oftentimes the investors you speak to are not on TikTok and seeing those trends about speaking out about absolutely self issues.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the conversation we were having. Wellness is definitely at the boom for sure. And these LED masks and all that, they're priced very highly as well, and women are actually investing. So we were just talking that the brand positioning for women's health products should also be like that.
Yeah.
So where people are just buying LED masks, they can also see there is PMS device.
Yeah. And I mean, also positioning an into LED masks that are actually properly cleared. Because I think that whenever there's properly cleared products, there's also oftentimes copies that are not certified. So making sure that if you are spending that amount of money, make sure you spend it on qualified and certified products as well. Because the thing is, I have nothing, for example, against vitamins or against all of those things, but none of them have certified ingredients and things. So sometimes you don't even know what you're getting. So to me, it's very much like, if we are asking women to spend money, we want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth and value. And that's why we do so many things like the 90-day returns guarantee, the personalized plans, just to make sure it works the best as it can. And it won't work for everyone, but it's about making sure that we give women the best chance and options to thrive.
Yeah, so I absolutely love that. And that also makes you stand out that you're so confident about your product that you're taking full guarantee that this is going to work, which is backed by science, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing coming back to your question about blending science with business is that, in a lot of business theory, people would say it's the wrong thing, but no one has ever built for this audience. And I know that women kind of deserve better.
Yeah.
And if we do build the best product, we will show that women are willing to invest as long as they're treated fairly. And I think that's what it all comes back to, that kind of trust going both ways.
No, absolutely. So why do you think women's health has been overlooked in science and tech?
I think the first and foremost reason is that there haven't been that many women in science or tech. And when you don't have the target population in the audience building it, it's very hard to figure out what the problems are. Like, then you rely on men, hear their partners complain, their daughters complain, and figuring out solutions. So I think number one is representation among STEM by women. And that was, I think, historically number one. Two is, and I think that's objectively true, women are hard. Like, men have one cycle, which is a circadian rhythm. Yes, you're different at night than you are in the morning. Women always have at least two cycles. We also have the circadian rhythm, but on top of that, we'll have the menstrual cycle, have the gestational cycle when we're pregnant. We'll have the perimenopausal cycle. And it's like accounting for those interruptions is by definition harder. And as a result, the research is oftentimes more expensive, more complex. And by definition, a lot of people like to take the easy problems first. So to me, actually, the indication that we're now investing in women's health shows that our science and tech has actually matured enough to take on harder problems in some ways. Not to say that men are easy, but I do think biologically they're easier systems to understand and nail.
Yeah, totally. So basically when we look at broadly femtech, most of the founders don't come from health tech or doctors background, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? How did your background in neuroscience shape your innovation of your work at innovation?
Yeah. Um, I think coming from a scientific background really supported our legitimacy and being taken seriously, especially when we're dealing with a new market, new problem, and new solution. Being able to show how we got there with all the training that I did, I think was incredibly helpful. And I think in the space, we don't see that many founders coming with that background. Usually, we see that a lot of founders come from a wide variety of fields that undergo their own health issues and realize how much of a gap that is.
Right.
I think there's a lot of great ways of building a company, and there are so many founders that can come from so many diverse backgrounds and build those amazing solutions. But I definitely think that, especially when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to building a team and helping people believe that we can get this done, when it comes to speaking with engineers and explaining them the science behind things, when it comes to leading clinical trials, all of which I did at the earlier stages, I think having that training was really, really, really helpful. And if there's one of the things that I'd say is like for anyone passionate about women's health, I do think getting that kind of core scientific or tech training is really, really important. So you can back yourself, especially because there's going to be a lot of people that tell you to do things differently. And having that training means you understand what advice is worth taking and what may be less worth taking as well.
Right. And do you think that's going to value add when you like going to investors as well? Because then they know that you know the size behind the product and it's actually your value proposition, right?
Completely agree. I think, nothing comes for free in the sense of like, you just saying I'm a scientist won't help it, but it will help you explain it the right way. It will help you break it down. And ultimately, I think so many women, you were mentioning the stats before that only like 2% of funding goes to female founders and they're all in the health space. And I think where it goes back to is a lot of women are oftentimes cautious and don't back themselves about putting themselves out there as well because they think they don't have the background that they need. So sometimes having the background really helped out in terms of backing yourself, getting in the room. And I'm not saying that if you don't have that background, you shouldn't be in the room. In fact, I'm saying you absolutely should. But having that background gives you that extra backing you need.
100%. As you said, like getting some training and help
Yeah.
or definitely helps to understand what you're building, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely great. I mean, everything is integrated with tech and AI now. The world is evolving really fast. And what do you think should be ethics when we creating health tech or women's health tech products and technology?
Ooh, such an interesting question. I mean, ethics is a very broad concept, and what I have found throughout, like working in medicine and working across healthcare, is that a lot of people disagree where the line is, which is why it's so popular. I think one, I think it's very important, and I think now it's an ethical requirement to build technology for a diverse variety of users. And I mean that by the times of, what type of hair does a woman have, which was a very important consideration for us to make sure we can accommodate people from different backgrounds, but also digital savviness. Like, can everyone even understand how to control a device and things like that? So I think a lot of things around accessibility are an important requirement when it comes to ethical tech building.
Like,
And then I think when it comes to healthcare as well, consent and explaining consent is really important because I think a lot of people often agree to things they don't know what exactly those are. And I think in a world of AI where a lot of the data we provide is used for training, it is very important that people understand. And oftentimes, like, I'm not against, a lot of my own data being used for training, but it is important that people understand where the information they put in, where does that go? And I think, yeah, that accessibility point being an ethical requirement as well as the consent point, I think are kind of the key pillars for me that I think are not necessarily universally accepted, but ones that I'm willing to kind of go to war for. And then the others, I think, are much more kind of subject specific. So when it comes to neurotechnology, we'll have some challenges and other technology will have others as well.
what advice would you give to young women who wants to change the world with science, tech, and women's health?
Yeah. Back yourself. I think most importantly, like, if you want to change the world, you can. And I think when I was young and was like, I don't accept status quo as it is and I want to make a difference. I think a lot of people who are like, oh, you'll grow older, you'll understand the constraints. And that is true. You do understand the constraints, but I don't think that should change the value proposition. So it's more like back yourself, understand if there is background that you need to get into an area. But most importantly, if you are passionate, if you have energy, if you are proactive, I truly think a lot more doors are open for people. And I understand that there are a lot of inequalities that prevent women from being in a lot of rooms, but I have always seen it rewarded whenever you show goodwill, kindness, openness, and proactiveness. So I encourage everyone to do that. And then hopefully build a better future where we have a lot more solutions for women.
No, absolutely. I love that. And I totally agree. I think you should never hesitate to put yourself in different rooms. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what you can do.
You don't know what's said inside, and you can never contribute your opinion. And ultimately, like, we're doing it for the next generations as well. And yes, even looking at the generations of the women who came before us, just realizing that now we can vote, we can have bank cards, which we took, or I took, so for granted. Right now, I'm like, how do we go through the next frontier for that next generation? I think it's going to be a very fascinating journey.
Yeah, totally. What's your day looks like?
Ooh, so, on an ideal day, and I will say I travel so much that all my men's routine gets put a little bit out of whack. But on an ideal day, I actually wake up relatively early, but not crazy, like 6-ish.
Right.
Then I usually try to do some exercise in the morning because I find that if I don't exercise in the morning, I'm always more anxious throughout the day. I feel like it stabilizes me a lot. So I usually either go for a quick run or do like a Pilates thing, or do like anything to stretch at home. Doing anything with my body really, really helps.
Right.
Then I usually head to the office. Oftentimes, like, I have my first few meetings over like a coffee. I'm usually meeting some investors, some other founders, some users that are interacting with as well. And then usually it's not some calls back and forth. When I have better days, I get to spend more time with the team as well. And then usually in the evenings, I really like to walk by home. Like, I find walking a very good way of digesting all the information of everything that happened in the day, especially when I'm always nonstop on calls, really understanding what have I distilled from there. And then, yeah, I try to always get a relatively early bedtime around like 10:30, 11 or so. So, yeah.
Great.
Sleep is really, really important too.
It is important, yes. Yeah. The rest is like rest and recovery is the key to everything.
Completely. And one of the things that we do on the Samphire app is we let you set different step and sleep goals depending on your cycle phase. But I realize how much of a difference it makes. Like, on specific cycle phases, I need to sleep a lot more. I want to exercise a lot more as well. And I realized that when I kind of didn't beat myself for like not doing the goals on like some days, I just realized that it's which is cycle dependent. So that was really liberating.
Yeah. Do you have any user case studies to share? Like maybe?
Yeah, lots. So as I mentioned, the vast majority of our users have PMS and menstrual pain in some shape or form. A big proportion of them also have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is a severe mood disorder, lasting from ovulation to their periods. And then quite a few users with endometriosis and chronic pelvic related pain. So we see the whole range. One of the stories was with a user that was using Nettle, for example, for 2 months in a row. And then she went on holidays, forgot Nettle. And then since then, she's been our most loyal user because when she was away, like, the symptoms came back and she's like, I forgot how good of us to be symptom free. So since then, she's been a like example of like, how do you stay diligent, and really ironically say that the best way to stay compliant with Nettle is to, see consistent. Yeah, be consistent because you see what the difference is when you're not. So that was one story. And then we have hundreds of stories of people who, tested our early prototypes when they didn't look as pretty. They were like all wires and everything, but they're just really needed to feel and see a difference. We've seen a lot of people shipping it to like their friends in the UK and then bring that to countries all over the world because obviously there's nothing like it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, our users have taught us so much. So yeah, I've loved it.
That's amazing. And I think last thing as a doctor and neuroscientist, if someone doesn't want to use a device, can you give us like 3 hacks what they're supposed to do to manage their PMS, or how do someone knows that they have PMD? Because like it's usually like I get a headache and you puff a pill thinking that it's normal, it's part of your menstrual cycle, right? But there's so much deep under down there which women just don't realize that and we tend to ignore it, right?
Completely. So for PMDD, the way that you spot it is that your symptoms will usually start quite a bit before your period, usually 2 weeks before. So if I start up earlier, you'll notice that. And it's usually that like persistent low mood state. So really you are experiencing depression. It just happens to recur every month. So if you're noticing that your PMS symptoms are lasting over a week and seem to be quite severe, impacting your ability to want to hang out with friends, perform at work and everything, it could be PMDD, and you just need to check the kind of official criteria as well as check in with your doctor. One of the things that we've added, because we've had a lot of users asking that same question, is actually on our app when you onboard, we say, add a package of different symptoms that you can track, and then you can track it over 3 months, and then you can see the trends, and then we can be able to better tell, like, based on your symptoms, does it feel like you're getting bad or not? So that could be something worth exploring. And then with a lot of things, I think it's very hard to determine what normal is. Ultimately, what I find is very important is that you are the expert of your own experience. And if your headaches and popping that pill, is fine and completely manageable and you don't mind it, then you're probably okay. But if you find that it interferes with the way you feel about yourself, which a lot of these mental disorders, especially PMS and PMDD do, and is impacting the way you live your life, then you should seek treatment because honestly, life could be so much better. When it comes to kind of non-Nettle management ways, I mean, I mentioned the kind of clinically approved ones, which is hormonal contraception, antidepressants, and painkillers are all effective on average. They're all effective for about 30 to 50% of users. So they usually will need to switch in between a couple of forms of contraception until they find something that they want.
Right.
We do see an emergence of a lot of natural ways of managing, so like exercise and nutrition. I think those are all very important. But I spend so much time with people and they just tell me all the time that, yeah, I'm told to eat very healthily and everything. But when I'm PMSing, that's the last thing I want to do. And then the problem is when you don't eat very healthily, then you also on top of that feel guilty for not having done that.
Right.
So yes, try to eat healthily and exercise, but most importantly, I think practice forgiveness for yourself because your cycle is a natural thing. And so for us and the way we build the app experience, which is separate from Nettle, is very much about being like, understand your body, because when you understand it, you'll actually realize it that what you need to hack it at different cycle phases is very different. And weirdly, when you let then guilt and the pressure and how many things you need to get done off and like you're no longer hold yourself, your symptoms are likely going to alleviate as well because you have less stressors holding them up as well. So I think understanding is always step one. And if you understand your body, then you'll know what the right solution for your body is because you'll learn to listen to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How does the PMS affect on productivity? Because I definitely see that affects me a lot.
Yeah.
I go crazy, and this has been happening for past 2 years. I never had this symptoms before.
You should definitely try Nettle. So actually, one of the biggest reasons that people end up deciding to buy Nettle is specifically for managing productivity and work challenges as well.
Right.
Because a lot of people learn to work around it. Like they know that the week before the period, they're going to be less productive. So they maybe work harder the other weeks and they kind of work less, but then you feel guilty. And oftentimes you can't plan which work is going to happen when. So the reason Nettle is very good for that is one, it does relieve the pain when it comes, but most importantly, that mood management and that brain fog and motivation. Actually, motivation is one of our highest reported symptoms that changes after using Nettle. Like, that feeling when you get out of bed in the morning, it has to be like a little bit dampened on some phases of the cycle. And Nettle seems to be able to sort that. So yeah, I mean, we absolutely know that these things change across the cycle. Nettle could be one solution and there could be a lot of other solutions. It's just about listening to your body. But yeah, there's definitely a change in the way you think about the world and how productive you are. And in many ways, it's because the menstrual cycle is philosophical. Like during the menstrual cycle, you're supposed to be reflecting kind of, like what is happening in your life and like that cycle of life. So oftentimes it will be actually less about you being non-productive, but more about you not seeing the point in being productive or something like that. And I think it's a thin line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was such a good conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.